Hello and welcome back to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg and I am here today to do my Friday Reads video and wrap up the week in reading and any big bookish things that have happened this week. The biggest bookish thing that happened this week is the Women's Prize announced their shortlist for fiction for 2022. I will put my reaction videos to that in the description box down below if you would like to check it out. I've had fun watching other reaction videos as well. It seems like a lot of people are a little sad that the Leon Ross book didn't make it, and Creatures of Passage as well. A lot of support for The Bread the Devil Need, which is one of the books that I am most excited about from that shortlist. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. A little bit of hate was thrown toward Great Circle. A lot of love as well. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. They will announce the winner on, I think, June 15th. So we will see what happens with that. The other big bookish thing that is happening this week is actually going to be happening tomorrow as I'm filming this, but it will be today as you watch this, if you watch it on the day that it debuts. That is, Saturday is Independent Bookstore Day. Really looking forward to this. I am going to be driving to Helena with Joel, and of course we are going to be going to Montana Book Company. I'm wearing my Raven sweatshirt today. Raven is a bookstore in Kansas. Their owner, Danny Kane, wrote How to Resist Amazon and Why, which is a very short book that I would recommend checking out. It's a really great bookstore that is on my bucket list. I would love to get to it someday, so I thought I would wear it today while I filmed my Friday Reads. And again, I would love to hear what you have planned for Independent Bookstore Day, what you are going to be doing. A couple of people have told me that they're going to be doing tours of independent bookstores in their area. I would love to do that, but we're just going to make sure we hit Montana Book Company, celebrate with them, and probably come home, visit my in-laws who live in Helena, and call it after that. One thing I have been working on the side as I film videos and do work is I am working on my Pulitzer Prize deep dive for Beloved by Toni Morrison. And one thing I have been thinking about as I put that post together, spoiler alert, is whether or not this would be the great American novel. And it's been a little bit difficult because I had a small part of the same conversation when I did my Pulitzer Prize deep dive on Lonesome Dove, which I will link in the description box down below. And it's tricky because I started trying to think, well, what is the great American novel? And I feel like this is a very nebulous term. It reminds me of the same conversation that you would have when you talk about what LGBTQ literature is. And I'll put my video where I talk about that in the description box down below, because it means different things to different people. So I feel like you can't really have a definitive answer for what it is. It means different things. It means a multitude of things. But that makes it difficult to try to figure out what could be the great American novel. I put a question on my community tab asking what you think of when you think of the great American novel, and what book you would say best embodies the term. I would welcome you now either to answer that question or those two questions in the comment section down below, or go to my community tab and answer on that post, because I'm really curious. And it's something that I am feeling like I need to work through before I can finish my Pulitzer Prize deep dive for Beloved, because it's a question that's probably going to come up with a lot of other Pulitzer Prize deep dives that I do in the future, because the Pulitzer Prize is so inherently tied to American life. Its mission statement is for an American novel representing American life, preferably representing American life, I believe is the actual term that they use. So the question of what the great American novel is probably going to come up, and your answers will be very helpful for me as I navigate that question, because all I have to go off of is my own perspective right now. And I'd love to hear what you think and what book you would say best embodies it. So again, either in the comment section on this video or on the community tab on my YouTube channel, please feel free to let me know what you think of it. As I said, I think it's something that it's going to be helpful for me to pin down. I might even do a video about this separate, and something that I can point back to in the future and have a little bit of the discussion. So having your definitions and what you think of as the best great American novel will help frame that video and future Pulitzer Prize deep dives that I have. So I would appreciate your thoughts. I actually got a lot of reading done this week. A little bit of a surprise, almost exclusively all on audio, but it is what it is. So let's get into the actual Friday Reads portion of this video where we talk about what I read this week, because there's a lot to cover. I finished 4 books this week since the last time we talked. One of them was already in progress, but I started and finished 3 books since the last time we spoke. I'm really impressed with myself. I feel like this is the most I have read in a single week in all of 2022 so far. So, moment of applause for myself, especially since a lot of the time I just have been very slowly getting through things, which is fine. That's actually the way I prefer to do it. But I'm feeling really good about how I did this past week. The first book that I finished was Amanda Gorman's Call Us What We Carry, a collection of poems. If you remember, Amanda Gorman is the poet who recited a poem at President Biden's inauguration in January of 2021. Basically set the world on fire. It took a while for her collection to come out. It was finally released later last year, and here it is. I knew that I wanted to purchase it to support her because I really loved her poem. Her speeches and interviews that she has given since that inauguration have been really great. I think she's a very intelligent and well-spoken human being, and I wanted to support her for that. But also when Montana Book Company included a challenge to read a poetry collection by a BIPOC author, I knew that she was the person I was going to turn to meet that prompt. So I have another thing that I can check off of my Montana Book Company reading challenge for 2022. I mostly liked this. I feel like the way I think about poetry is the way a lot of people think about short story collections. You frequently hear that complaint like, oh, some of the stories were good, some of them were not. It was an uneven collection. I like short stories. I like short story collections. So I'm okay with it. I feel like we apply a criticism to short stories that we don't apply to novels, because oftentimes a novel will have, think of Great Circle. It's 2 different storylines. One of those storylines is weaker, but a lot of the time we forgive the novel overall. And I feel like we're a little harsh on short story collections. However, I do that to poetry collections because as I was reading this, I was thinking, well, some of these are good. Some of these are just fine. And maybe it seems a little uneven. There are really great lines in here. There are really great poems in here. And there are other ones that feel like they have a clever idea and then don't quite execute. And there are a couple of times where it feels like she's trying a little hard. Amanda Gorman loves a homonym and wordplay that can come from a homonym. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. When you do something that much, it starts to feel a little uneven and it sometimes feels a little forced. But overall, I really liked the collection. I'm glad I did this. I don't read a lot of poetry. It's a genre I really struggle with a lot as a reader, and that was one reason I really wanted to read a poetry collection. That was why I wanted to meet the prompt for the Montana Book Company, and I wanted to try to participate in National Poetry Month, which is April, and I'm glad I did. Unfortunately, I'm going to miss Aussie April and some of the other things that were going on, but I hit Poetry Month, so that's great. And I actually got another volume of poetry in as well, but we'll get to that one in a minute, because the next book that I finished was not poetry. It's the one that I had in progress last week when I did my Friday reads, Infinite Country by Patricia Engel. I did not have a lot left when I did my last Friday reads, and I talked about this one a lot in my last Friday reads video, so I will put a link to last week's video in the description box down below if you'd like to hear more about this book in particular. There's not a whole lot to add to that. It just, I didn't get to finish it until I think finally on Monday is the day that I finished it. And I really like this book. It's a 5-star read for me. It's in my top 5 reads of 2022 at the moment. And we'll see where it lands, because there's May, and then at the end of June, we're at the halfway point. So I will be doing a check-in on my favorite reads of the year so far. As of right now, this one is in the mix. I really liked it. It talks about the human stories behind the immigration debate. It talks about borders in a really interesting way. It talks about family and separation and the gulfs between people and changing priorities. I liked it. It works on multiple levels. It's a small little thing, so I would definitely recommend this. The audiobook, which is how I listened to this, is only about 4 hours, maybe a little more, maybe even a little less. And I really enjoyed it. I would say definitely pick this book up. I believe it is out in paperback now, but I have this hardcover copy of it. I'm glad I finally got around to it. I had started it last year and put it down so I could focus on BookTube prize reading, And I really wanted to circle back to it. I'm glad I did. This also hit a prompt on the Montana Book Company's reading challenge for 2022. So I'm cruising along and making a lot of progress on that. And again, feeling really proud of myself for that. Then I turned to a poetry book. I can't remember if it was Tuesday or Wednesday this week, but my boss wasn't feeling well. And we had sort of cleared the calendar so that we could work on something together. And then he wasn't feeling well. So I kind of had a lot of time to myself. And I started the audio of Time as a Mother by Vuong. This is a new poetry collection from him. He is the author of the novel On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, which I feel was a very contentious book when it was released. It was one of those love it or hate it books. And I'm one of the rare people I saw that was kind of in the middle. I thought it was good, but I didn't love it. And this poetry collection ended up in the same zone for me. He reads it himself, and I liked it, but I didn't love it. And at times, I just kind of coasted along listening. There's not any really one poem or line that stood out to me. He's a great, beautiful writer, but nothing really cohered. Like, I think if you asked me to define Call Us What We Carry, I can tell you what the overall theme and ideas were, and I have less of a sense of what was going on in Time as a Mother, because it feels like it's doing a couple of different things. There's the grief over his mother, there's the immigration, the struggles with sexuality and all that stuff, and masculinity. So, I don't know. I'm glad I did it, but it wasn't a great experience. But however, I was done with it in an hour and a half. That's how long the audio is. So that was nice. And when I finished that, I still had a lot of time on my hands. So I thought, well, let me just look for something that will be quick and easy on audio. And I saw A Spindle Splintered by Alix E. Harrow, which also would hit a prompt on the Montana Book Company Reading Challenge for 2022. I could actually use it for two, because there's a prompt on it for a queer retelling of a fairy tale or myth or folklore. And there's a prompt for a book that has a sequel releasing this year. And A Spindle Splintered has a sequel called A Mirror Mended that will be coming out, I think, in June. So right now I'm using it for that prompt, the book that has a sequel coming out this year. The audio is, I believe, 3.5 hours. It's 4 hours at most. So I started it after I finished Time as a Mother, and I finished it in the same day. So in one day, I started and finished 2 different audiobooks. And yes, both of them were really short, but let me have this. I'm feeling really proud of myself. And A Spindle Splintered is clever. It's not the type of book I usually read. Not something I would have picked up for myself if it hadn't been sort of recommended by Montana Book Company for that prompt about the queer retelling of a classic fairy tale or myth. And I follow Alix E. Harrow on Twitter. Very funny author. I would recommend giving Alix E. Harrow a follow if you don't already. Twitter is a whole conversation that I'm not going to have in this video after what happened with it and its purchase. Not going to get into it. I did decide that I'm going to stay on the platform for now. We'll see how that goes. But anyway, if you're on Twitter, I recommend following Alix E. Harrow. It's a very clever book. It's sort of a meta retelling of a fairy tale, because it's not a strict fairy tale retelling. It is about a character who is aware of Sleeping Beauty and all the different versions of Sleeping Beauty that have happened in the past, and finds herself in a Sleeping Beauty story, which is kind of interesting. It is also a very feminist book, and I thought that was an interesting way to put a twist on what is largely considered the least feminist Disney movie of all time. I didn't love it. If I had read this as a teenager, I probably would have liked it a lot more. I'm not a teenager, and it is what it is. I'm glad this exists. I'm glad I read it and engaged with it, and I really love the fact that I managed to start and finish 2 different audiobooks on the same day. Again, just feeling really proud of myself for that one. That is where the successful portion of the reading week took a turn, and I face planted for the rest of the week, but I still want the credit for having done well, because I really slowed down after that. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that I've mentioned I've been getting really bad headaches since I had COVID in January, and they got really bad on Wednesday. And Thursday was just a mess. So yesterday, as I'm filming this, I didn't get much of anything done. And I had been kind of banking on feeling better. I wanted to really pick up and make progress on Before Night Falls, which is the LGBTQ in translation read-along selection for April and May. And I didn't make much progress at all beyond the weekend. So I still have to get pretty far into this. There's another month in the read-along, so it's not like I'm falling behind. But I also do want to catch up and finish this, and then I can start getting some other things off of my plate. But with the headache that I had on Thursday, I didn't make progress on anything. I didn't even pick up the audiobook that I started on Wednesday, which I'll talk about in a second. And that's unfortunate, but it is what it is. And, just got to ride through this until life kind of normalizes a little bit. And at least I had a couple of days where I was able to really focus on reading and get some things done. Makes me wish I had spent Tuesday focusing on this instead, but how was I supposed to know what was lying in the future? Oh well. So I'm really liking this so far. The opening is a little more brutal than I was expecting, but I'm going to power through, and the writing is really good. It's an interesting story. I did get the movie from Netflix as well. Yes, I am one of the last people probably who still gets DVDs from Netflix, and I got this from there as well. So once I finish this book, I can dive into that as well. And hopefully this week I will make some progress on this. Obviously tomorrow I'm driving to Helena for Independent Bookstore Day. Don't know how much reading I will get done in this because of that. Maybe on Sunday I'll sit down and really spend some time working my way through it. The audio that I picked up on Wednesday after I had finished 2 different audiobooks in one day, I'm just going to keep saying that, was Leaving Is Not the Hardest Thing by Lauren Hough. I had been interested by this book when it was initially published, and then there was a whole thing on social media last year where Lauren Hough became controversial. I don't remember the specifics of what happened, but I had been thinking in my head that I just wasn't going to read her book. It had something to do with, she went on a tirade about 4-star reviews on Goodreads. Why 4-star reviews? I don't know. It doesn't really make sense. And when she started getting called out for it, instead of backing down, she really doubled down, made it worse, started arguing with people and blocking people, and people got very mad and started leaving 1-star reviews of her book on Goodreads, and it just was a mess. It was like a huge unforced error. I didn't want to pay too close attention to it because it's just a lot, but I think it was definitely an unforced error on Lauren Hough's part. Whoever she is, whatever she's like in person, it just was clearly a bad way to handle social media. But Charlie from the Montana Book Company recommended this book and said that they really liked it. And I need a book that is a memoir in essays, and this is a memoir in essays, so I thought I'd give it a try. I'm not gonna just avoid Lauren Hough forever because of something that happened, and I think maybe reading the book will have added context to it. I am going to look into what happened last year, but I feel like it's important to talk about the full picture of the book. And so far, I have only listened to the first essay, which is about an experience in the military when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was a thing. Lauren Hough is a lesbian. And I liked it. The other thing about this is that Cate Blanchett reads the audio, and that was another thing that made me really think I just want to listen to Cate Blanchett read somebody's memoir in essays. And Cate Blanchett is great. She's a phenomenal actress, and she does a great job with this. At times, I forget that the voice reading is Cate Blanchett because she's acting as she reads. And it doesn't sound like the voice of her that you hear in movies or in interviews or anything like that. She's kind of doing a little bit more gruff, almost like she smoked a bunch of cigarettes before she started talking. And it really works very well. But I made a lot of progress. I think I got into the second essay. I'm listening to it on audio, so it's hard to tell exactly when one essay ends and one begins, but I'm thinking that the whole Don't Ask, Don't Tell storyline was probably one essay. And then I got into the second essay, which is roughly about 25% of the way into the book. And then I didn't make any progress on it yesterday. And I haven't listened to any more so far today. So hopefully I will make some progress on this, and then I will finish it and move on to the next audiobook. So my focus for the coming week is going to be definitely Before Night Falls, and finishing Leaving Is Not the Hardest Thing. And then I am going to try to dive into Solo Dance by Lee Kotomi, translated by Arthur Reggie Morris, which was one of my most anticipated books of 2022. It's going to be released soon, and I have an advanced e-galley of it, and I want to jump on that before it is published. So once I finish Before Night Falls, Solo Dance will be my next book. And I haven't quite decided what my next audio is going to be. I'm trying to be a little loose. That really worked well for me this week, not having a plan, because it allowed me to dive into some quick things and then take on a little bit of a longer thing. I enjoyed that. So I haven't planned that yet, and I'm going to try to get some things off my plate. So come May 10th, when Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois is released, I can get back into that and hopefully be done with that before June. And since we're getting into May, I'm going to need to start thinking about my pile of possibilities for Pride Month, because that will be coming. I will also have a monthly wrap-up for April and talk about my May plans more specifically in that. That will be coming, but I think I'll leave it at that for today, for this Friday Reads video. If you've read any of these books, have thoughts about them, please let me know in the comment section down below. Recommendations. Tell me what you're doing for Independent Bookstore Day. Tell me what you think about the Great American Novel, what you think it means, what book you think best embodies that trait, and all of that stuff in the comment section down below. If you do leave a comment, I really appreciate the time and thought. People take a lot of time and thought and energy into the comments that they leave. And I just want to say I really do appreciate that. It means a lot. That is exactly why I wanted to have a BookTube channel in the first place. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And if you've watched this far, thank you again. As always, I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.